Welcome to the Hen House Podcast, where mothers rise together in authentic conversation and sacred connection. With your hosts, Chantal Breanne and Andrea Sjoeberg. It's time to jump into the Hen House.
Hello, welcome back everyone to the Hen House Podcast. And we are super excited that you are here. The topic for today is gentle parenting. And let's just dive straight in.
I was going to say I've noticed on social media, there's like a lot of people like to poke jokes at gentle parenting. I don't know if you've noticed that.
You know, I think that it goes both ways. There's big support for it and big support for a little bit less gentle parenting.
Yes.
Again, I think the thing with parenting is there is so many different approaches. There's so many different philosophies. And it's not about one necessarily being right and all the others being wrong. It's more finding what works for you philosophically.
Yes. Yeah.
And what works for your children. And finding a way to parent, because I think we all have something in common. Is we all love our children immensely. And we all want them to grow up to be wonderful, productive, kind, lovely human beings, as adults. We want them to grow up into wonderful adults as well, and along all the stages,
Yeah, definitely.
How that gets accomplished, I think that there's a lot of room for conversation and to do things differently. So
yeah, and I'm curious, because I guess you would consider the way I was raised was gentle parenting. What about you?
So I wouldn't say it was necessarily gentle parenting, but I also wouldn't say it was overly harsh parenting. So like I have wonderful parents, so it's not about placing judgment on past generations or anything like that. And, but my parents did believe in spanking. Okay. They did believe in punishment for sure.
Yeah.
They believed in timeouts. And now I was a very sensitive child, so it didn't take very much to quote unquote punish me. Usually just like to make me feel like I was being yelled at a little bit, I would immediately change my behavior. So I was they didn't have to get that creative with me.
Right.
But I did sometimes get sent to my room, or it's okay, you're in, timeout, or you don't get to play with this toy, or you don't get to do this fun activity because you lost a library book, or or whatever it was, right? So it's and I come from a Mennonite background as well, so there's an element of like my parents, I would say, relative to how they were raised, were very open to the emotional spectrum. And there's an element of like, this feeling that you're experiencing right now is not conducive to what we're doing, so change it.
Right.
So there were elements of that too.
Yeah.
And there was also tons of love and tons of kindness and affection. And, so I can't say I was raised harshly either.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
But so I guess it depends. So maybe the question is, what exactly is gentle parenting? Because that may be something maybe even I don't know exactly, because there may be a range. And I know some definitions are there's no punishment, there's no hitting, it's all collaborative. You never want to fear your parent. And so, but I guess, and I know this topic's really important to you, so.
Yeah, and I guess, I think it's a spectrum, like you said. I think even within gentle parenting, like everyone sort of has their idea of what that means. Like some people who do gentle parenting are okay with, like timeouts, or some people are not. But I think the foundation is it's supposed to focus on like the emotional connection and having like mutual respect with your children, and having healthy boundaries, and but modeling that behavior. So it's different from, like it's definitely, if from my perspective, it would definitely mean like no physical punishment, no like extremely harsh consequences, things that are considered would be considered more reasonable. That's
Mhm.
how I view it. And I still, like, I would say that as I've become a parent, I've become more gentle. I started off more rigid, like I had specific things I needed my kids to do. You have to sit at the table, like I would, because before I had a child, I had these ideas of how I wanted my family to run. But then once the reality sat in, I realized that it was stressing me out. Like, it was like there was just a lot of fighting and like opposition, and it's like too much tension, and it wasn't something I wanted for me or my kids. So I decided to let a lot more things slide. So I used to like be very like, if my kids would get up from the table, like, nope, put you back. We're eating. Like, this is mealtime.
Mhm.
And I was driving myself crazy. And I told you that my parents did gentle parenting, and sometimes I would think that they were a little too permissive, right? So I was like, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to have more structure. But um I remember specifically a time when I can't remember which child it was. It must have been Rashid, or I can't remember. It was one of my kids was just not sitting down to eat, and I kept like bringing them back and forcing like, no, you have to eat, you have to eat. And eventually they were just not listening, and I did a timeout, and my parents were looking at me like I was absolutely insane. Like, I see the looks on their faces, like they were like, what is this girl doing? And over time, not because of their opinion, I just realized that it was backfiring. Like, it wasn't really working, and it was a lot of energy expenditure that I wasn't necessarily wanting to do. So I just became much more permissive. And, you know, I guess some people would have thoughts on that too, but, that's just how I choose to be.
Right. Well, there could be an element too of picking your battles.
Yes, exactly.
Like it's just you can't fight over everything.
Right.
And and to some degree, I don't believe it's healthy for children to grow up under such severe chronic stress either. And
Yeah.
to always be rushing and always be
Yeah.
there. And so I kind of look at it now. Again, my daughter is only 13 and a half months. Well, actually
Mhm.
almost 14 months. I guess in 2 days she'll be 14 months.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
So about when this airs, she'll
Yeah.
be 2 months the day this airs. Um, but so she's kind of just getting into the stage where she wants to get into everything. And so it's been something I've been looking at as far as gentle parenting a lot, and kind of but it's been more of a philosophy
Right.
of how I may do things up until around.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I had heard someone say, and I don't remember who, but they had said it's your job as a parent primarily is to keep your kids safe.
Yeah.
And and that's much more important than keeping them happy.
Mm-hmm.
And happy, I guess it depends. Yes, do I want my child to be happy? Yes. But sometimes in the moment, children just aren't going to be happy.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
really been kind of a balance of, okay, she wants to get into everything. And there are some things maybe I prefer she not get into, but it's not that big of a deal. And then there's things like the outlets and the oven
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, no,
Yeah.
be firm. And so it's kind of starting to learn that balance of how do I be firm and how do I not yell? Because I don't want to be the mother who yells all the time,
Right.
if I can help it anyways. And but how do we find that balance? And so that, yes, it still feels collaborative. And yes, sometimes, my voice may be very firm. It may be like a full body, no, don't touch that,
Yeah.
because I don't think that gentle parenting necessarily means, oh, baby, don't touch that, lovey. Like, oh, I can never yell at you. I can never raise my voice. I can never be firm. You just get to run the show and do whatever you want.
Right.
Like, I think it's finding ways to say, what are my boundaries?
Yeah.
Like what's truly important, and then be really firm with those. And it gets a lot more complex as children get older. Like,
Yeah. And I noticed that too. For example, like I was able to just talk to Chanel. Like she was so in tune with me that if I said no, don't do that, she would just immediately listen. Like very easygoing child, like never had to raise my voice, like just never gave me any issues. And then when I had a second child, Rashid was much more he just would do what he wants, but also like I didn't have that with him where I could just say something and he would immediately listen. And also sibling rivalry started happening. And that was really difficult for me because Chanel was jealous of Rashid, which is like a very common thing with siblings, but she would be mean to him. And I was like, oh my goodness, my like sweet, adorable child is like pushing her brother, or when I'm not looking, or like hitting him. And so she was actually pretty mean to him. And I would always intervene, but in a gentle way. But then it got to the point where he was fighting back. And I had two children that were just like hitting each other. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what is happening? Because I never hit them. Like, I was always fairly calm. Why are my children so aggressive? Which, of course, I now know it's very normal. It's just a phase. But so I started off because it just bothered me so much, like not being very calm about it, like I would get upset, I would be like timeouts and like getting visibly angry, right? And then that was not working. Like it wasn't getting better. It was actually getting worse and everyone was crying and upset. So I actually stumbled upon Janet Lansbury's podcast, and she is amazing. She has a book. I forget what it's called, but it's like the no, wait, I'm gonna look it up actually. Because it's so good. It's called No Bad Kids, Toddler Discipline. So it's really about like not shaming your children. And that's what I realized inadvertently I was doing because I had my own judgments against their behavior. But reading her book was so eye-opening because, and listening to her podcast, because the way that she talks about like toddlers' behavior is that they are toddlers and they do not have the impulse control or the emotional regulation, but us as adults do. And so when we're interacting with them, like there's no in no way, shape, or form should we be acting like there's something inherently wrong with them that they're doing. They just simply don't have the impulse control. So her method of stopping hitting was like staying very calm, not raising your voice, and just gently restraining their arms and saying, I can't let you do that. Because when you say, I can't let you do that, you're taking responsibility for their behavior instead of saying something like, no hitting, we don't hit, that's bad, like things like that. So
That's
as
really interesting.
yeah, so I can't let you do that. And the same goes for if they're doing anything dangerous, like just calmly holding their hands and saying, I can't let you do that. Like no timeout, no punishment, just very calmly taking control of the situation. Because from her book, her perspective is if your child is hitting, it's really your responsibility. Like you should not be letting them hit. So you need to take control of the situation. And once I started implementing that tactic, they both stopped hitting within like a week or two.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Completely
great.
stopped. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, from my observation, I would say that's a big, it can go both ways. So I think there can be a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to young children, especially children who maybe
Yeah.
can't talk very much yet. There's a lot of misunderstandings. And I think it can go both ways. And I think with toddlers, adults tend to say, oh, I should treat them like an adult. I should communicate to them like an adult. And I'm not saying you have to baby talk your kids or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally don't have the frontal lobe development that helps them make good decisions. They've not learned how to regulate. And I don't believe that self-soothing is really a thing. I think they're learning how to co-regulate until they kind of begin to piece it together to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's very valuable to know that full frontal lobe development of the brain does not complete until 25 years old.
Yeah.
So,
don't get married before you're 25.
I think it's probably mostly done, probably by like, let's say, I don't know for sure. I don't know what the rate of development is, but like, again, it's like by 18, 19, you can make a lot of really good decisions. However, the full frontal lobe development is not complete until 25. And there was a doctor, she was a chiropractor, Dr. Susan Rossi, and I was in her office and I remember her telling this to a parent who was really struggling with their teenager.
Okay, yeah.
They're a teenager. They don't have full frontal lobe development yet, and their body is raging with hormones.
Yeah.
Very unreasonable to expect them to make good decisions. In fact, everything about them right now is wired to make bad decisions.
Right. Exactly.
And, and so to some degree, it's similar but different with toddlers. And I also think people tend to think babies don't understand what you're saying, or toddlers just don't comprehend what you're saying. And I also believe that they're extraordinarily intelligent. And they understand so much of what you're saying, and they observe and, understand so much more of what's going on around them than people give young children credit for. And because they can understand something doesn't mean they can overcome their curiosity. And toddlers, I think to some degree, are designed to push boundaries and push limits.
Yes. Yeah.
Have big emotions and temper tantrums and like.
And I heard that they're doing that so they can kind of figure out like their environment and like what's okay, what's not okay, and what's not okay, and things like that.
Yeah. And with that, I think what you're saying of having very clear, consistent boundaries.
Yes. Consistency is huge.
Where it's not like it's okay today, but not okay tomorrow, where it's like, this is always a no, and I can't let you do it.
Yeah.
For your safety, or because for someone else's safety, or whatever.
Right.
Just can't let you do it.
Yeah.
You don't touch the oven. It's hot.
Right.
I literally can't let you do it because it would be much worse to be permissive and let you get burned.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then to say, and it's okay to have a meltdown. You still can't do it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the more they think that, like, I heard that there was a study with inconsistent reinforcement. So when the reinforcement is inconsistent for, say, like crying, or say sometimes you come when they cry, sometimes you don't, or sometimes they get a treat, sometimes they don't. It does something to your brain with like the inconsistent reinforcement that makes them more likely to just keep persisting. I believe that's what the study was. I remember reading about that in college, and I was like, oh, I have to be consistent when I have kids because otherwise I'm going to create like little monsters. like,
And I think that there's a level of safety that comes from consistency as well, of
yeah.
I'm safe, like people are responding to me in kind of like the same way. It's almost like a level of structure,
Yeah,
you know.
that's true.
And if there's a study on it, I don't know, but it makes sense in my brain.
Yeah, well, there's actually, I believe that they said that children that grow up without any structure or boundaries or consistency have much higher levels of anxiety.
Okay.
And that's why I've always been like very firm on like my bedtime routine. And sometimes people think I'm like a bit nuts about it, but I'm like very consistent. Like, this is bedtime, this is when we're getting in the bath, and this is just the way it is. Like, I don't stray from that very often. Like, even if, say, my parents are visiting, or I'm always at home. Like, catch me every night. I'll be at 7:30. I'm at home putting them to bed, unless, of course, like my babysitter's working or something. But yeah, I personally think that it's helped me and them having that routine and the structure around, like, okay, this is your bedtime. And I saw something that said that children need a lot more sleep than we realize. I
Yeah.
just saw that on Instagram actually. And now with like screen time and stuff, it's getting like it distracts their brain so much that they're not sleepy, but they actually are tired.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I've read recently on the research on screen time is basically any screen time, especially in the hour before bed, but really any
Yeah.
screen time, it decreases the quality and quantity of sleep. And sleep is also very important for metabolism and healing and all of that. And so they're linking screen time and sleep to some of the issues of obesity that we're seeing in many countries right now.
I believe it. I actually saw a pediatrician. He was talking about his children, and he said, oh, I wish I could remember what he said, but he said like he would prioritize sleep over like all these things, like all these things that parents worry about. He's like, sleep is more important than all of that. Like, all these extracurricular activities you're signing your kids up for. Like, a lot of parents with their kids in school all day and they're at work, and then they're at like, some practice till like 7:30 or something.
Mhm.
And it varies from night to night. And he was saying that he would definitely thinks that's not beneficial. Like, it's much more beneficial, even up until teens, for kids to be sleeping at a regular hour and not
Yeah.
not out at like some practice. Like he said, the benefits from whatever they're doing, whatever activity, is gonna not counteract the benefits they would get from sleeping consistently every night.
Right.
Like a good chunk of sleep.
And I wonder too, as far as circadian rhythms, how healthy it is for us to be in all of these artificial lights for hours in the evening, telling our
Yeah.
body, no, it's still daytime. And then all of a sudden it's supposed to be nighttime at like a time that's convenient, right?
Right.
And, so I wonder if naturally children will kind of wake with the sun and go to sleep when it's dark. And it may vary throughout the year based on light
Yeah.
as a
Well,
possibility.
it's really interesting because I've noticed ever since the time changed a couple weeks ago, me and my kids have been sleeping way more.
Oh,
I
interesting.
I don't know if this is like our natural cycle or something, but like they've been staying up slightly later, like I would say like half an hour later, which doesn't really make sense because the time changed in a way that you would think they would sleep earlier
Mm-hmm.
because it went, I don't know, what did it fall out? I can't remember. Fell back or forward. I don't know.
None
But
of that ever makes sense to me, but
But
Thank
and
goodness
also
for phones, and previous to phones, I'd have to turn on the radio and go, okay, what time is it? Because don't leave it up to me, fall back, jump forward. None of it makes any sense.
it doesn't. But so, and then we're also all sleeping in. Like we used to be up sometimes at 4 or 5 a.m., like
Yeah.
consistently. And since the time change, my kids are sleeping in till 7:30.
Oh,
And
wow.
I have no idea what happened. The only logical conclusion I can think of is that this is a more natural, like, circadian rhythm for them.
Right.
It's
Well,
very weird.
some people argue that 6 months of the year is the more natural time, and then the other one is more manufactured based on whatever. And I don't know which is which, but to me, it's kind of like, does it really matter what the time is? When the sun is up, it's daytime. When the sun is down, it's
Right.
nighttime. Like maybe that's the
Yeah.
more like nature-based way to look at it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's not really what I do. I mean, well, actually, we wake up relatively after the sun rises.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
too far after the sun rises. But we don't go to bed when the sun sets because I go to bed at the same time as my daughter.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I can't do like 6:30 p.m.
Oh, yeah. That, I mean, when Chanel was a baby, she stayed up with me as well till like 9 or
Yeah.
10, like,
Yeah,
because that was, and we slept in.
we do more like 10. Now with the
Yeah.
time change, all of a sudden we were going to bed at 8:30 for like 3 nights. And then now it's 10 o'clock again. Like, how many weeks has it been? We're back to 10. I'm like, I don't even.
Yeah.
But there is an element of, for me, what, so, and again, she's still really little, but in like through kind of the baby phase, I just kind of said, like, it's so hard to keep a baby who wants to fall asleep awake.
Yeah.
So even if it's like 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the evening, and she's super sleepy and just like, and I mean, starting more recently, I've maybe, oh, let's play a little game, or what about this toy? And maybe she can get distracted. But sometimes she just can't be distracted. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna let her sleep.
Hmm.
And even if she sleeps for an hour, so what if we go to bed at 10:30 instead of 10?
Right.
But I'm just gonna be flexible on that because I don't want to torture her,
Yeah.
like put ice in her clothes or something like that to keep her awake, which I've heard people do. And I'm like, you know what, whatever. She's just gonna sleep. If it's 9 o'clock and she's getting really sleepy, then it's just like, okay, I'm just going to bed early tonight.
Right. Yeah.
But so
It's interesting because, like, my daughter never wanted to sleep. So, like, I never had that problem. Like, she just stopped napping. She only ever would sleep in 30-minute increments throughout the day. And then when she finally would go to sleep, she would be up every 30 minutes until around 1 a.m. And then she might sleep for like a couple hours stretch.
okay.
Yeah. So she was never, but like Rashid has always been a great sleeper. Like he loves his sleep. And I do that though, because like if he naps, he will be up till like 10 or 11. Like it's ridiculous.
Right. Well, I think it makes a difference as they get older.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
In their school and stuff like that, like.
Because I have been known to be like in the car ride home, like, oh, Rashid, look out there. Like, look over here. Don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
I do not like it because he wakes up, if he falls asleep on the way home, he wakes up so grumpy. Like, he is just not happy at all. And
Right.
I used to let him sleep and I'd be like, okay, let's let him have a little nap and he'll just go to bed a bit earlier. But now that he's like 3, he doesn't need it as much. And my daughter stopped napping at 2. So
Okay.
like
I allegedly stopped napping at 1.
really?
Yeah, my mom was like, man, I was ripped off. Because I had told her, I was like, I stopped napping at like 1.5, didn't I? And she's like, no, 12 months, Andrea, 12 months.
Yeah, see, every child is different. Like my daughter, I remember still trying to get her to nap before she was 2, when I was pregnant with Rashid, and I would literally be spending 2 hours trying to get her to fall asleep. And she would fall asleep for like 15 minutes and then wake up. And I was like, this is not making sense anymore. Like, she
Yeah.
doesn't want a nap, fine. And so I just stopped trying. And if she fell asleep, she fell asleep, but it never
Right.
probably happened like twice.
Well, and that's the interesting thing too, is I feel like trying to force sleep when someone's not overly sleepy yet, even if they seem sleepy, but it's like, I read somewhere it's like give it 15 minutes, and if they're not asleep or at least like really calm, scrap it and try again in a half hour.
That is amazing advice.
And I've really taken that. And sometimes in the evening, it's like, okay, try and go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. I'm so tired. And she doesn't
Right.
want to. And I'm like, okay, let me, like, this is all about me because I just want to
Right.
go. This isn't really about her right now because she's
Yeah.
not quite ready, but she will be in a half hour. So rather than fight and have us both frustrated, which is going to make sleep even harder if everyone's
Yeah.
angsty, I'm like, let's get up, let's go play, let's go do something for a little bit. And usually within a half hour, she'll be tired,
Yeah.
you know?
That's what I finally have started doing. But I did not, like, nobody told me that one before, and I wasted many nights.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't know what was going on, but it was not working. But it was like because my children would give me intermittent reinforcement. So I was like, I never knew, like, is it gonna work or not? So some nights they'd be out, and then other nights it'd be like an hour of me trying.
Right, right,
Now I'm pretty good where it's like if it's not working, I'm just like I either say like you guys have some quiet time to read, but usually that doesn't work. So usually I just tidy up or like get ready for bed and let them sort of like follow me around for
right.
like 30 minutes until they're like
Use their
tired.
final energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right. And some of that's maybe part of gentle parenting too, of
Yeah.
and also intuitive parenting, but kind of letting the child's needs lead a little
Right.
bit and still maintaining some boundary of like this is still bedtime. And
Hmm.
if for some reason you can't fall asleep right now for whatever reason, then that's okay too. And I'm still with you and I'm not angry and you're not getting punished or left to like scream or,
Yeah.
and again, the sleep training thing, which we've talked about in previous episodes too, but that also for me is part of like the early stage of gentle parenting of saying, you know what, I'm just going to show up when there's need and when there's tears and when there's whatever. And it does start to change because when they're really little, it's it's nice to know they don't cry unless they truly need something or are hurting or really need
Right.
comfort, and then kind of for me in the last months, it's like, oh, we're getting some screaming and some yelling because I took something away that she was playing with that she shouldn't have,
Yeah.
or, or I had like a bottle cap in my hand or something like that. And she wanted it. And I'm like, nope, you can't play with that. That's a choking hazard.
Yeah.
And she'd cry and cry. And it's like, well, let me pick you up. Let me give you a hug. Let me give you a kiss. And no, you
Mhm.
still can't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do the same thing with my kids. And like they definitely have had their fair share of tantrums, but I would say they're pretty I feel like I've been blessed because I've seen some tantrums, say in like the store or whatever, or back when I was a nanny, and I'm like, thankfully, knock on wood, knock on wood. My kids have been relatively good tantrum wise because I have been consistent, like, especially when we're out. Like, I'm like, if I say no, we're not doing that. And if it's going to be a tantrum, like, we're leaving or whatever. But recently I had a really bad tantrum in Costco with Rashid because Costco had all these like crazy kids toys for Christmas, like these gigantic like toy cars, and I'm the type of person that I'm like, I can see why you want that. That's why I can be permissive. 'Cause I'm like valid, like that does look cool. Like I would want that too. So like a lot of times I will like it's not always a no. Like I will be like, okay, we can get something small or things like that. But like these toys were giant. And I'm just like, we absolutely cannot get this gigantic car that's like $150. Like
Right.
it's just not gonna happen.
Right. Well, and you know what? I see those cars in our neighborhood here, and they have these toddlers literally as their parents are going for a walk, they're driving their little car down the sidewalk beside them. And I'm going like, how fun. Like that's
Yeah,
really cool. And what would make them ever want to walk or ride a bike?
right. Yeah.
They get to have this like motorized whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and riding a bike would be so much healthier.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Definitely.
great that they're outside.
Yeah.
But it's, and it's kind of like, but wouldn't it be like healthier to maybe ride their bike?
Right. Right. And the crazy thing is this wasn't even a motorized car. This was like a collectible, like
Oh,
it was like
interesting.
one of those, but I guess he just
Yeah.
thought it looked really cool. And he
Yeah.
wanted I've never gotten so many stares because like I needed to continue my shopping, but he was having a horrible tantrum. And like I think he was tired and hungry and it was
Yeah.
like the time of day. Like I think that a lot of tantrums can be prevented if you are proactive with your kids. Like, okay, are they going to be hungry? Are they going to be tired? Like what time is it? What have they done today?
Yeah.
But it was one of those days where I was like, oh, it's 3:30, like we don't have much planned. I do need some stuff from Costco, so let's go to Costco. It wasn't good. And I was freezing. That was the thing cuz like it doesn't happen very often. I froze and I didn't know what to do because that part of me was like, should I just get the toy because I wanted like it to stop, right? But I'm like, I can't do that because that's exactly reinforcing his tantrum. And also, this toy is ridiculously expensive and it's not even really a toy. So it's like a collectible car. So I'm just like, and like so many people were staring at me and
Well,
I
and
was
then
just
how much of it is other people are judging me?
right. People were judging me and like I was like, come on, like this could happen to any parent. Realistically,
It
this was
really,
like
really could.
yeah. And I think a lot of people know that, but I could tell that people were looking at me like, what do you do?" And I'm like, I just said no, like I didn't do
Right.
anything. And nothing usually he's easy to redirect. Nothing was redirecting him. Like he wanted that toy so bad. And I just
Oh,
it was like it was sad. So I mean, I ended up I don't know how I got him to calm down, but he eventually did, and I was able to, like, finish my shopping, but it was like I was like, "Man, like, this is" and some people don't even bring their kids in public until they're a certain age for that very reason, you know?
right. And I don't know that that's reasonable either. Like,
Yeah, I'm very just like, "These are my kids, and they're coming with me." Like, even if I'm it's like I believe in, like, visible parenting is what one of my doula mentors called it.
yeah,
Like, it's like, these are my kids and this is my life, so, like, they're gonna do all these things that are involved in my life. Like, I don't cater my life to the I do, but I don't. Like,
right.
I will take them if I wanna go to, like, a nice restaurant. I'm not like that parent that, like, "Oh, I'm not going to the nice restaurant." Like, I'll straight up take them. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm a paying customer. Like, these are my children, but like it's fine. Unless say a
yeah.
restaurant said like no kids. Um I draw the line at like traveling alone with them because that is very stressful. Like flying, I will do it, but I don't prefer
But
it.
that's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah.
haven't done too much of restaurants and stuff like that yet, but that's in part because I'm going, it's really hard to like I'm not having fun if I have to hold her.
Right.
We're in this
Yeah.
crowded little booth and
I get that. And I
like we did go to a restaurant when my parents were here, but
yeah.
then we could kind of take turns and my mom would hold her and like walk around, and it
Yeah.
was warm, so they went outside for a little bit and then came back in, and my dad could hold her, and we kind of all took turns eating.
Yeah.
But I'm going like, if it's just me, I'm definitely not taking her to a restaurant right now.
Yeah.
Because it's just not
I'm
for
crazy
either
and
of us.
I still do it, but only because like as much as I am a homebody, I also like I need to get out too. And my
Yeah.
mom always makes fun of me because like I always have to leave every day. I don't know where or what I'm doing. I need to do something. But like for example, my brother, like they never bring their kids out to eat. Like they're just like it's just not worth it. And I respect that too because it's not even a great time, but
No,
I
yeah.
just like it.
My parents brought us everywhere, even when we were really little. And both of my
Yeah.
sisters have done it like that too. And
Yeah.
for me, I think it's in part, it would be different if I lived where all of my family lived and we went out like all together. Because I
Yeah.
know that when like my sister's kids were little, then they would be like, I'm done eating. Like, and they kind of start getting rambunctious. And it's like, and I would take them for a walk, or my mom would take them for a walk,
Yeah.
or like we would take turns holding them. And there was
Yeah.
just more adults around that could
Yeah.
help. Whereas
That makes a big
me,
difference.
even if it's just me and Simeon, it's like, yeah, we could go out to eat, but let's just eat at home. It's healthier.
Yeah.
Like it's just more comfortable.
Right.
And it doesn't put extra work on either one of us to try
Yeah.
and, to try and make this happen. But when we had company in town, like when my friend came to visit, then we did go out and we did some activities and ate at a restaurant, and
Hmm.
and sometimes we'll do like a cafe, especially outdoors, and it can work
Yeah.
great. Um, and I think as she gets a little bit older and, would be okay maybe sitting for at least 20 minutes at one time,
Yeah.
it will get a lot easier and we'll probably get much more adventurous about eating out. But
Right. And I mean, I think that she's at that age where it is very hard.
well, she's one, she wants to be, she's
Yeah.
constant movement. Like
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
fun, but she's constant movement. Like, but she's so cute. She'll like be running on the floor, and then all of a sudden she'll sit down, lay down, snuggle the floor or kiss the floor, and then she'll be like, boop, up again and off.
Aw, that's adorable.
She's like, I just needed a 1, 2, yep, I'm good.
That's funny. I'm trying to think, like, I didn't really take Chanel out to eat when it was just her. Like, when she was a baby, I don't know why I do it now. And I actually have a funny story of like about a couple months ago. I took like we my kids love this one particular ice cream place called Jenny's Ice Cream. I don't know if you've ever been, but it's popular
No.
in Atlanta. So in Sandy Springs, they have this place where they have like a greener space and people can run around, and they have Jenny's ice cream and they have restaurants. So I was just like, we went there for ice cream, but then I was like, you know what? Like, we should probably eat something first. So I sat outside because I knew having both the kids inside is going to be much harder. I'm like, this way they can be free and nobody will judge me or give me weird looks. Like, it'll be fine. So we sit down to eat and they decide that they're going to go play. So it's fine. I can kind of see them, but there's oh, there's like a fence blocking their view. So I can see their heads, but I don't know what they're doing. So I'm sitting there like eating, they're running back to the table, eating a little, running away. They like took all these chopsticks, okay, because it was an Asian restaurant. So they each took like it was disposable chopsticks, like handfuls of chopsticks. I'm like, guys, like these are not toys, like let's leave it. So whatever. So we're done eating. I get up and I see what they're doing. They have taken their chopsticks and they have dug up all the mulch. Mulch is everywhere. And I'm like, oh, because I could not see from there down. And I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, guys, we have to like clean this up. But that is like that is something I would do. Like, and it's because I believe that I deserve to like live my life too and like go to a restaurant and like I don't feel that I should be confined to like my house just because I'm like a single mom.
No, no.
So I'm like, I'm gonna go. And if they tear up the mulch, they tear up the mulch. Like it's fine.
Right. Well, and I think it's really easy to get uptight and upset about all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, curiosity and play and all of that is such a beautiful thing. And that probably comes into gentle parenting too, of like, you know what, like they're going to make messes, they're going to get dirty, they're going to, out of curiosity, it's not because they're bad people.
Yeah.
It's not because they're trying to make you angry. It's not because anything like that. It's because they're curious and because they're learning and because they're having fun.
Right. And also the reason why I'm very like I would say it is something that I'm like kind of passionate about because I don't agree with the way that society is not accommodating to children. And I feel like people who don't have kids yet, or maybe their kids are older, I feel like they're not accommodating either. And there's a lot of judgment. And it's like, I don't like that whole mentality of like children should be seen and not heard. And like, it's almost like this culture of like children just should stay home and not disturb the world. And I don't agree with that. And I think that society is more empathetic and accepting of dogs than they are children.
Goodness, yes.
And that bothers me. So I'm like,
Yes.
I'm bringing my kids to the fancy restaurant and you deal with it. Like, say something to me because I will.
Well, it's like,
Thank
goodness,
you.
if Paris
100%.
Hilton or whoever gets to bring their dog to the restaurant and you're going to have organic little like treats for someone's dog and put out water bowls and whatever, then.
And I noticed
And I'm not talking like service animals. I'm talking
right,
like the little dogs in purses,
yeah.
you know, at all the fancy restaurants. And it's like, you know, then you can get on board and get over the fact that I have my children.
Right. And I'm like very like obnoxious about it. Like I would love for someone to say something to me because I will talk back to you and like defend my kids. And like it just bothers me because even when I lived in Midtown and I had Chanel in a stroller, like people were not accommodating. People were more accommodating towards people with walking their dogs than they were to me with my infant. And it really bothered me. And if you think about it, people are more upset about charities involved and more passionate about charities about orphaned animals than they are about like children being human trafficked and things like that. And I
Right.
think as a society, this is maybe controversial, but I feel that people have been brainwashed to be more passionate and empathetic towards animals than they are towards living human children.
Right. Well, and you know what? I think even so I was telling Simeon this the other day. I had when my daughter was sleeping, I had put on a little bit of Full House, kind of
Okay.
like Blast from the Past, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was watching and I'm going, it's so interesting because that little baby, like she's in a scene, they're holding her, they walk into the living room, they dump the baby in the playpen, and then everyone else lives their lives. They go, oh, where's the baby? Oh, she's upstairs in her crib with the door closed in a room by herself.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, logistically, as a little baby on a scene, like on a set,
Yeah.
yes, this is convenient because then the baby can go back to her parents,
Mm-hmm.
you know, after being just briefly whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And once she's off camera, she can go back to her parents. I'm going, it's very convenient. But when you're looking at this, and how often do we actually watch television and say, oh, this is a movie set? Like,
Right.
remember, this is a movie set. No, you're looking
Yeah.
at like this is someone's life because it's
Yeah.
built out like it's a story. And you're like, wow, children are just not in the picture at all. Like, I even
Yeah.
listened to a podcast, really interesting podcast talking about air quality and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy is like, yeah, you need to like make sure your children's furniture can off gas and all of that before before you put the infant into their nursery. He's like, because, brand new babies, they spend like 17 hours a day in their nursery by themselves. And I'm like,
Oh, really?
that's what you did with your kids? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going, my baby spent like 19 hours a day in my arms.
Right. Yeah.
like really, probably quite literally. And if
Yeah.
not in my arms, usually in someone else's.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, she did sometimes go on the bed or other places by herself
Right.
and stuff like that too. So,
Yeah.
but she liked to be held. And so I said, well, that's fine by me. I'm happy to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Like I am happy to do that. And
It all ties in though to the whole thing of like the way that our society's not accommodating to parents or children, and the fact that there's still like this air of like children should be like seen and not heard. Like I feel like it's still, even the way some employers just, are not accommodating, or for
yeah,
example, like the notion that a baby would spend 75% of their life in their nursery alone in the dark. Like that's just crazy to me. And
right.
yeah, it's just
Well, children should be seen and heard and loved and get to interact with life,
yeah.
like even the idea of like, oh, that's the children's table and this is the adult table.
Yeah.
Like you know, I think there's room to move out of those ideas. Like,
And it's interesting. I think that here it's getting better, but I went to another country. I'm not going to say where I was or why I was there or whose house I was at, but I was in another country. And I remember I was staying at someone's house and I was like, I know there's children that live here, but I was like, I have no idea where they are. Like, where are they? Are they at
yeah.
school? Like, where are the children? Because I know these people have kids. And then I remember, I don't know, somebody was like, I think I asked, I was like, where are the kids? So then they were like, oh, like, follow me. They were upstairs, all like six of the kids in a bedroom in the dark with a nanny.
Oh, wow.
I was literally, and they had been like, that's where they were for like my whole stay. Like for like not just like for an afternoon.
Right.
And I was like, what? So like that was really eye-opening to me, and I was like, this is odd. And so that I think is like an extreme example of like children should not be like seen or heard from. So I'm glad that it's not to that extent. I mean, maybe some places here it is. I don't know if that was common in that country or if that was like just that particular family. Like, I'm not sure, but it was very alarming to me.
Right. And it is interesting because I feel like it can change.
Yeah.
My older sister, her kids are her oldest two, I think he's 12 and the second one is 10ish.
Mm-hmm.
I have to probably do some math, but anyways, in that ballpark. And I would say like in the last year, sometimes they'll like I'll call my mom or something like that and she'll be like, "Oh, the kids are downstairs." And it's like we've been talking for like a half an hour and I had no idea that they were there and she's like, "Yep, like in the last couple years like they like come in the door, hugs, excited, and like zoom, like straight to the basement and pull out all the toys and like the
Yeah.
Legos and the drawing and the art stuff and they just like entertain themselves and they're like, we don't want to play with you. We're doing our thing.
Yeah.
Like you all just keep living life. Like we're so good.
Yeah. Have you heard of there's like this notion people are talking about on TikTok about like living room family or bedroom family?
Oh
So
no, I've
there's
not heard of that.
Yeah, so there's like this thing where it's like people ask how they grew up, like, were you a bedroom family or a living room family? So like certain families, it's like everyone would kind of hang out in the living space and like the kids would be there. But then other families, it's like, no, children go to their rooms after school
Oh,
and they
interesting.
hang out, play, they're in their rooms. So I thought that was interesting because I would say Like, I definitely liked playing in my room. I would say I was like a mixture of both, but we would always be in the family room and,
I'm like,
throughout
I don't know. I think we were a kitchen family.
yeah, maybe that's a thing too. That
I'm like, I don't know. We spent a lot of time in the kitchen. The kitchen and living room. Now, I did spend some time alone in my room. And I remember sometimes, like in the mornings when I was little, I would like sneak into my sister's room and I'm like,
oh,
everyone is still sleeping. Let's pull out all the Barbies, but nobody close a door, nobody turn on any lights, and nobody flush a toilet or turn water on. And if you go downstairs to get water, you have to walk just perfectly on the stairs so that you don't have any creaks. Because then, if mom and dad keep sleeping, we can play for like a whole hour or two on Saturday morning.
aw,
We have to do chores.
that is so funny. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. That's
And
cute.
so then we were very much bedroom people, but otherwise we didn't spend too much time in our bedroom. Sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, I don't.
If I was like junior high, maybe, but when I was little,
Yeah, like I don't recall being like forced to be in my bedroom. I
no.
recall like just wanting to be there because that's where all my toys were, and like
Right.
that's where I
Well,
was.
in fact, we had a babysitter who came to the house once and she was like, I need to make a phone call, and she locked my sister and myself in our room.
Oh my goodness!
And she was like, you all need to take a nap. I have something I need to do. You need to,
Wow.
like, we don't sleep. And she's like, nope, you're going in your room. And so she locked us in our room for a
Oh my
while.
goodness.
And we told my mom as soon as my mom got home. And well, let's just say that babysitter heard quite a lot.
Oh, good.
And she's like, you will never be hired again. And I think my mom refused to pay her.
Oh, good. Yeah, she
She's
locked you guys
like,
in
I
the
didn't
room.
hire you to lock my children in their room. That is
Yeah.
so inappropriate. And it's not like the lock was on the inside, like she tied it to a door
Oh
across
my
the way,
gosh.
like
That
to lock us in.
is scary. Like, what was she doing?
And she was like, I need to rest for a little while. So you all need to take a nap.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know. I'm like 6 years old. My sister's 8. We don't nap.
Right. Yeah, we're too old to. I stopped napping when I was 12 months.
Right. I'm like, we don't nap.
Yeah.
But what was my point? But again, it's, like this idea that children just need to do what you want. And I think that's part of it. Like someone had said something. She's like, it's really important to recognize that children are autonomous beings
Yeah,
and that
definitely.
they are fully human. And no, they're not adults. And no, they don't have the brain development of adults. And so they behave differently and they have different needs. However, they are absolutely autonomous human beings
Yeah.
who have all the same wonderfulness and little hangups and quirks and little issues as any other human. And they deserve to be respected and
Hmm.
treated well. And they
Yeah.
deserve to be, seen and
Hmm.
part of the family and part of the world, and
Yeah.
deserve to be able to get to explore. And they're going to make mistakes. And yet,
Yeah.
this to me was so powerful when I read this somewhere. And she, I think, had said something similar. Um, but I had read this somewhere else previously too. Um, but like, imagine as an adult, like you're cooking dinner and you mess it up. Like
Yeah.
you drop a plate on the floor, there's glass everywhere, you've ruined the food, like something burned, there's smoke in the house, and you're like having a meltdown because
Yeah.
it's not going well. And you're
Yeah.
crying or you're angry or you're whatever. And let's say your partner comes home and is like, bad girl, go to your room.
You messed up.
Like, look at this mess. Like, you're a horrid person.
Can you imagine? Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
like, we would be saying, screaming, abuse, abuse.
Yeah.
And yet that happens so often to children, where
Yeah.
it's like their bad behavior equals bad person. And
Yeah.
that to me is like the biggest thing I would not like to carry forward into the future generations of like behavior is behavior and gets dealt with as behavior,
Right.
hopefully compassionately.
Yeah.
But behavior is not who you are as
And
your essence.
it's so important. That's kind of the premise behind Janet Lansbury's No Bad Kids book.
Right.
And yeah, because once kids start labeling themselves too, or you label them like as a hitter or like a bad kid. And I kind of felt like Rashid, my son, was getting that reputation, like amongst not me, but like amongst like my daughter was saying it, and like people were just acting like he was bad, and I was like, he's not bad, I know he's not bad. And so I really tried to like, I'm like, this is getting null and void. Like, this thing that
Right.
Rashid is bad, we are not taking this, because this is not
Yeah.
going to follow him forever. Because once they get that label and mentality, I feel like it can really like snowball.
Well, and it doesn't help you as an adult either if you have this idea that you're bad, you need to
Yeah.
be punished because all of a sudden you're trying to create a successful life and you can't, or you self-sabotage and you're like, where is
Right.
this all coming from? And I think it's a lot of what gets soaked in when you're really
Yeah.
little and different ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think really sensitive children who maybe respond more or a little bit more sensitive to, nervous system stimulation can
Hmm.
also get labeled as a problem because they're
Yeah.
responding more or differently or
Yeah.
and so I think that's something to keep in mind too. Like to be a sensitive child doesn't necessarily just mean, oh, you're going to be weepy and quiet and
Yeah.
like shy or whatever. It could also mean that when you get really overwhelmed, you don't know how to deal with it. So there could be an outburst.
Yeah, and that's actually what I explained to people, because I used to feel like I was getting like people, because Rashid used to like roar at people. Like, it was like this funny thing, and then it kind of like spiraled, and it was like turned into this thing that he was like bad. But and I would tell people like does that because it turned into a thing where it was almost like a defense mechanism. And I was like, when he feels threatened or overstimulated, he roars at people. And I could tell from my like intuition of observing him. I'm like, he's not trying to be antagonizing. He's feeling intimidated and threatened in that moment. So like I had to explain it to people, like who other people who would be caring for him, that like, no, he's not bad. He's overstimulated. And when he feels any sort of way threatened, he starts to roar. It's like his defense mechanism.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
I think in his case,
Yeah.
that was what was happening.
Yeah. And I think that that happens probably more than we know, because about 20% of the population would be highly sensitive. So just everything in the environment is just a little bit more ultra stimulating. And,
Yeah.
and
And
so, I'm thinking even of myself because I'm going, I'm highly sensitive. And if I get very overwhelmed,
yeah.
it's like I find that I want to maybe lash out or I don't know how to deal with my emotions as well. And so I'll be like, and I've said this before, I
Yeah.
even before having a baby, I'm like, I need to put myself out in timeout for just a little bit because I'm getting very like
Hmm.
rationally upset. And so
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit like everything's too bright, everything's too loud, things are just hurting me and it's making me feel very not safe in my being. So I'm like, I just
Yeah.
need to go sit quietly, maybe in a dim room, or
Mhm.
go for like a brief little walk outside or something just to kind of like reset the system. Like, and then
Yeah.
be good to go again.
And I'm like that too, and I only realized that more recently.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think with gentle parenting, that might be the key is to go with compassion first
Yeah.
To recognize no one is a bad person, no one is a bad kid. This
Mm-hmm.
behavior is all stemming from something. So let me hold my boundaries firm and
Mm-hmm.
compassionately and curiously say, huh, I wonder what's going on with them right now.
Yeah, and that's why I think, like, you can kind of see how even with the situation with Rashid, where it was like he was roaring and he was getting labeled, and I was like, I'm gonna nip this in the bud because I feel like it can happen too a lot more to boys than girls,
Yeah.
where they get labeled and then it's like it kind of can like spiral through their whole
Yeah.
youth. And I was like, I'm stopping this now and I'm gonna advocate for him and I'm gonna let everybody know that he's doing this when he's overstimulated. So you're overstimulating him.
Right. So
That
you
was
need to
my
change your behavior.
yeah, that was like my intention. I'm like, like he's getting overstimulated. Cause like
Yeah.
he would like be roaring at like adults. I'm like, so anyways, I felt like I really had to advocate for him.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, that's such a good way of looking at it and
Yeah.
really beneficial for him. And it's his way of communicating. And children
Yeah.
don't communicate in the most articulate way that's easiest to understand. So I think as parents, we have to get very curious and say, huh,
Hmm.
what is this behavior telling me? Because they're not trying to be bad. They're not
Right.
trying to have bad behavior. They're not
Yeah.
trying to annoy me. They're not trying to.
Yeah. And if
Right.
say I was to like over meet him with like more intensity, that would only perpetuate it. And so I
Right.
feel it could go either way. Like it could get worse, and now he doesn't do it at all, and he's super calm and chill, and like that whole notion of him being like the bad kid is like completely gone. So I feel like I'm like, yay,
Well, that's a wonderful win. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Parenting is such a funny thing because it does not come with an instruction manual.
right.
And it's
No, it
like you just
doesn't.
have to figure things out as you go. But I think to come from curiosity
Hmm.
is is a really beautiful place.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and none of us are going to be perfect, but we hopefully get to be
Mhm.
compassionate towards our children. And hopefully our
Yeah.
children grow up to believe that they are worthy, wonderful humans.
Yes.
Ultimately, that's the goal. So, however you achieve that is the goal. And,
Hmm.
and someone had said once too, like fear gains compliance really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, that's not really the adult that we want to raise. We don't really want an adult that doesn't ask questions or that
Hmm.
just bends to anything anyone wants. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think to some degree, if we don't want to keep raising people pleasers and people who don't know how to do critical thinking or anything like that, we have to start saying, okay, I'm going to allow my child to ask questions. I'm not going
Yeah.
to be the person that they fear.
Right.
And I'm still going to find a way, as gently and compassionately as possible, to still find ways of living that work.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I find that I feel that people who are raised with more fear, they end up finding a way to do things just to get away with it. Like when they're so controlled. So it's I find that adults who were raised with like that really like authoritative parenting, fear based, I feel that they end up becoming adults who sometimes they can like lack the intrinsic motivators to like be a good person. That sounds so harsh, or to do right, because it was never about like what they wanted. It was like, what can I get away with? Because it's like my
Right.
environment is so controlled.
Right. Or there can be secrecy where you're like, oh, I can't share anything and
Yeah. And I think
getting
that
in
that can,
trouble or
right. I think it can just lead people to lack integrity with themselves. So I really don't agree. That's why I don't agree with that, because I think it can have a like a rebound, the opposite effect, and then Do you want someone who the second they're out of an environment where they're controlled to just all of a sudden turn into like wreak havoc and like have no like no
Right. And I think
conscience
it
or
could maybe
moral
go the
compass?
other way too.
Yeah.
But like, it's just an interesting thing. I feel that the more people we have in this world who believe that they are good and believe that they are worthy and that they deserve respect and that they are happy to respect others and that they deserve compassion and love, what a happier, healthier world that would be.
Yes.
And so I think that that starts when children are really, really, really little. Just
Yeah.
because they won't remember it doesn't mean they don't have cellular memory, doesn't mean that it didn't imprint onto them in some way.
Yeah, definitely.
So and no one's going to be perfect. So
Right. No
um,
one will be perfect, but you know,
but
no
there was a
parent.
psychologist, and she had said, she's like, we're all going to mess up our kids in certain ways. We're
Yeah.
all going to do things that they're going to remember and say, you did that awfully. So
Yeah.
she said, what you do is you make your mistakes and you apologize and you love
Yeah.
them and you just love on them, love on them, love on them, love on them. And
Yeah.
that repairs as much of the damage that you're causing as possible. Because
It's so funny
you
because
won't
like
get away without not causing some damage. It's not possible.
I know, and I've like I've come to terms with that, and like I did hear that too, that like apologize and like own up to it. That's like a big thing. So if my daughter will call me out on everything. Like I can't get away with anything with Chanel. Like she is so like so if I am mean or raise my voice or lose my temper, she's like, "Mommy," she's like, "You are not supposed to do that." She's like, "You promised you would not do that." And so I like immediately like but it almost got to the point where it was like, okay, Chanel, like I'm just being firm. I'm not yelling. I'm setting a boundary. And she started doing it for everything. Like started taking it a little too far because she knew anytime she called me out, and I think this is part of gentle parenting, like I respected her opinion. So I'm like, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry if that was too harsh or if I hurt your feelings. Like, I'm sorry. And like, you're right. I won't do that. But she kind of like tipped it a little too far where now I've told her, like, I'm like, Chanel, yelling, I'm not yelling. I'm like, I'm being firm and loving. And this is how it's gonna be. But like she sometimes she takes that as, oh, that's you're yelling at me. I'm like, gosh, I wonder what she says at school. She probably tells them me every day. But but there was a phase where I was under a lot of stress where I was yelling like more than I would have wanted to. And she nipped that in the bud like right away. Like I couldn't like do that for very long.
I mean, in a way, that's good though. It's like she's helping you be a better parent.
It was, and I really appreciate that. And it's like that. It's like
Right?
good. You know what? Like Val, like you have the right. I don't want to teach her that like she number one can't speak up for herself, and number two, if she speaks up, that she won't be listened to. So anytime she said that, I always that totally like
Right? And adults are
calms
not
me down.
always right.
Pardon?
Adults are not always right.
Right. Yeah. Wow. My screen makes the lighting quite different. Did you see that?
It
My
did for a second. Yeah, just for a second. Um, but yeah, that is I love that. That's amazing.
yeah.
But yeah, let's wrap up because I think that was amazing. And
Yeah. We could go on all
um
day, but my phone's
yeah, we
actually
really could.
dying. But where I might get booted off here.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for jumping into the hen house with us again today. And we are super excited. So we have 2 more episodes coming up for season 2. And so stay tuned for next week, which we're going to have a really exciting interview um, coming up for next week. And after that, we're going to have kind of a little holiday themed finale for season 2. So stay tuned for those. And if you would like to leave us a review, that would be amazing. If you are loving this, you can go ahead and subscribe. And if, you need a little extra time getting through some of the longer episodes, you can always listen in little snippets along the way. So that's good too. But thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Chantal, for all of your wonderful stories. And I really love that.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. And okay. Well, yay. We will see you all next week. And thank you so much to all of our wonderful listeners. And a shout out to Chantal's mom, because she listens to a lot of them too.
Please, I'm not